Mr. Galimov, the collection of data and data processing, such as RWD during the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Galimov is the Executive Director of Data Management 365. Thank you so much. Please, the floor is yours. Unfortunately, Timur cannot hear us. Mr. Galimov, can you hear us? There is no sound. Hello, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you now. Dear colleagues, I'm glad to welcome you who made it to the end of the conference, to my presentation. I am sharing my slides. It has been a pleasure to listen to different speakers, especially Evgeny Petrovich, because he managed to express similar ideas. I had a feeling that we prepared the presentation together, although I do not know him personally. There were a lot of interesting things said about RWD. I liked the presentations by our European colleagues. In my presentation, I will try to tell you how RWD is used in Russia. I'm not going to mention mathematical or specific methods we use. I will just tell you about our goals, how to achieve our goals, and what barriers we encountered on our way. As for my company, it's called Data Management 365. We develop innovative software, well, EDC, IWIS, and we also have software for data management, for statistics. We also have doctors in our company. We've had 1,200 projects from 116 sponsoring organizations, including top 10 companies in Russia. Also, we have experience in more than 20 therapeutic areas. Well, of course, we send data to FDA, EMA, and the Ministry of Health of the Russian Federation, despite the fact that often, as for DIS, there were more than 800 projects conducted. As for RWE, RWD, there were only 11 um, projects. Our colleagues are not very happy about RWE, RWD projects. Later, I'll try to explain why. And this slide shows the information reflecting the requests coming from clients who needed such projects. We didn't have such projects in Russia en masse. This list is just the rating of problems and going back to the previous presentation, many sponsors are starting to consider RWE, RWD projects. First of all, there should be hypothesis before the project is implemented. COVID-19 is the accelerant right now, and right now we have no time to dilly-dally. We have no time for preparedness. A decision should be taken right now, and the project should be adequately justified. In this situation, those who have access to structured data will win or have ready information and have a chance to do RWE or WD projects right away. Well, pre-project preparedness is important for the proper, adequate trial, also implementation of the project. Here, we mean not just some particular patients involved, but also checking different lab hypotheses, the sponsoring organizations which are ready to finance RWE projects usually have the full picture of the ecosystem of the drug, starting from and analyzing literary sources. And if we embark on an RWE project, it can help you make final decisions later. Feasibility is another important thing because it helps us understand what clinics can do in reality, not on the basis of what the chief investigators wrote, but what this or that particular site can offer us in reality. Well, they guarantee that this particular project will be implemented properly. And another thing which is good in my view, and this has already been mentioned several times, that's to conduct the project without placebo. This happened with COVID-19 to just accept that the data of a real world data. Well, unfortunately, we didn't manage to finalize the project, and the Ministry of Health did not like this idea, so the project was not fully implemented. But I think that this idea, well, can be quite important. We just need to prepare for implementing this project. Of course, pharmacovigilance was mentioned many times. It looks like I repeat those things that were mentioned before, but the pharmacovigilance is very important for RWE. So we will process the data set and and by the way, this was mentioned by Sergei Glogoliev, an advisor to the minister, where the platform, which is the biggest one in terms of the number of projects being implemented as far as clinical trials are concerned. So there was a need to harmonize all the data, especially obtained from outside sources. Well, of course, I should say that besides those things that I have mentioned, there is a need for marketing, which are paramedical things. Well, you can see some of the aspects shown on the slide, such as price, loyalty, patient's loyalty, doctor's loyalty. Well, of course, these paramedical data are linked to big data and data from our databases. Well, we used our platform to organize one academic project, which is part and parcel of the general concept. Well, here you can see what can we afford. Well, first of all, we work in this situation where there are so many regulations, and it's a pleasure when we start working with RWE. At least right now, we can do everything while being relaxed, and the objectives we had uh, right now do not fall into strict JCP regulations. Yes, so we have some reflexes. We try to describe something. We need some additional documentation. We need some systematization, like when we talk about the quality system. But right now, since there is no specific regulatory basis, so we can be more relaxed as we conduct such a project. So there are no some structures related to data storage. I mean the company which uh, is shown here, like SDTM for CD disks. Well, you can use raw data, unprocessed data, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go into detail here. Now I'd like to talk about real problems that we have encountered. Well, you can see three colors, red, green, and color. Well, again, well, you can see the red color shows the most time-consuming process. And again, you can see it here. So this is the classical process. First, data collection. Here, everything is quite clear. Well, just to give us what you have, and then we'll figure out what to do with this data. The data should be blinded and just provide this data for us. And we're not going to discuss any details, especially with those people who are not specialists, just to give us the data, and that's that. But the most serious problem is data science in its classical form. I do not know. Well, you can see in that in this case we encountered a fiasco, and right now it's difficult to process the data that we get, especially when we're talking about raw data. It's much easier to build the Trans-Siberian Railroad again as compared to data processing. It's a very difficult process. The quality of data is very poor. We don't have adequate instruments here. And of course, some people say, let's use some artificial intelligence, some big data. Well, these instruments are not so good for this. And we're working on that right now. Modern technologies do not allow us to use them in reality. Data science specialists are not enough, but I should say that the most problematic is central monitoring. We've been using central monitoring for several years. Without it, we cannot achieve our goals. Well, again, it takes some time. Then fraud control. Here, everything is clear. You cannot just invent the wheel, just use this classical data management. Then the next aspect is uh, automatic coding. So we should have an automated process. Well, automatic coding is very important. It should be automated. Only in this case, we'll be able to reduce costs of such projects. And we do have problems with this in Russia. And I should say that we also encountered the Western data sets with public and commercial studies, and the problem of interpretation in Russia is a problem because many doctors make in Russia diagnoses which do not exist in Western medicine, and some of such things have already been mentioned today, like this bacteriosis, osteochondrosis, etc. And so sometimes another problem is common general diagnosis like pain syndrome. But what is meant by pain syndrome? And thank God right now there is the neural network we've been developing for 4 years. It copes with these problems, and the most errors have been corrected. Well, then there is analysis according to the plan, which is last but one, and of course the multivariate analysis of the search for variants. That's what I meant here. This is last but one slide where we had most problems. Again, the most difficult thing was anonymization, the use of personal data. We know what the problem is here. We know that many hospitals care about the data of their patients. And, well, usually the center has no patient's permission to process such data. Another important problem is the lack of the regulatory platform for data transformation. And at the stage of mapping, we found this problem. Of course, time is number three. We never have enough time. Also, number four, quality and fullness of data. We thought it was 7 to 12% in reality as far as 8 projects are concerned. We had 23% of data had to be deleted or this were doubtful data. So this is a serious problem. Well, I would like also to say purely statistical things related to this data processing. Svetoslav Leonidovich mentioned this in his presentation. I think these are systematic errors that we encountered as we were working on such projects. Also, I would probably identify the desire to find the sampling or the data, and we have to deal with such situations. That's the unique feature of such projects. And another major scourge of such studies, when we're not talking about cost effectiveness here, the link is very indirect. So sponsors are not ready to invest in such studies. When we're talking about some medical issues, well, marketing should be left at the doorstep as far as our today's discussion is concerned. Well, this is one of my last slides. I tried to formulate together with the colleagues from my company. We are participating in the development of RWD, and of course, we we've had several projects, though not that many. The first thing we need to do is to start with the development of adequate instruments of data processing. We should start with the engineering aspects. So I started not with the strategic aspects, but I started with the tactical things. The reason is very simple. We've already got data, and we cannot just collect data for 10 years as they did this in Europe first. So we must think, what are we going to do with this amount of data which have been collected? Sometimes the databases can be different, but they do exist. And now the question is what to do with this data. And of course, many speakers today urged to accelerate the development of the regulatory framework. That's quite understandable because we need to work with such things on the national level. And also, maybe we should include all these aspects in our project. Of course, there are a lot of applications for engineering companies. They're shown here on this slide. And in conclusion, I would like to say that right now, in general, evidence-based medicine and clinical trials in general are not medicine anymore. These are data science. That's the science about data. That's data management. Our industry is being driven by data, and we will see more and more applications related to statistics, big data with every coming year. And of course, I respect pediatricians very much, but as far as I can see, I'm the only technician and of course, as for evidence based medicine concerned, it's based on data, and we would like to see more engineers, statisticians, and of course, data science representatives. Thank you very much for your attention, dear colleagues. I'll be glad to answer your questions in private. Thank you very much for your interesting presentation, Timur Ilyich. Of course, there will be other conferences like that. First, pediatricians will speak and then engineers. Okay. Well, the clinicians did not raise any concerns about whether they want to speak uh, first or not. So they will speak in the middle. Well, Alexei, as for COVID-19, it's better to select the children by hand. So we'll start to select children by hand, and that means pediatricians should speak first next time. Okay, thank you so much, Timur.